our industry and finance advisors is somewhat built on instant gratification. Do the public mailer, do the dinner seminar, do the paid radio show, do the paid TV show where you're purchasing an audience, spend money, get appointments, close deals. And social media does not work that way at all. It's the long game. It's the power of creating great content consistently.
You are absolutely right. It is not the fast way to get clients, but it is a consistent way to get clients once you get that built. Like my last client who signed on 2 days ago, we were 5 minutes into the meeting. He goes, I'm ready to go, man. We don't really need to talk more about this. Like I've known I wanted to work with you. I've listened to all your podcasts. Let's just get this going. When do I start? And what do I need to do?
Welcome back to another episode of Do Business, Do Life. Excited for today. We have Thomas Kopelman here with us today. Welcome to the show, Thomas.
Thank you. I'm excited. I remember listening to your show, I don't know, a while back and just learning a lot from it. And I was talking to you about this before, but I'm a big fan of James Knoll and loved that episode as well.
Well, my first show, we were just reminiscing. I'm like, man, you're only 28. You're off to a quick start in finance. I think my first show probably started when you were still in high school. So I don't know if you were geeking out on finance back then or not, but yeah, I appreciate it.
What was the name of your last show? You had a different show before this, right?
The Elite Advisor Blueprint was my first show. Started that in 2015.
Yes, that was one of the first ever, like when I started in the industry, I was like, I started somewhere where I didn't have a lot of learning. And I was like, I am going to just consume as much content as I possibly can while you're trying to figure out clients. And it was one of the very first podcasts I binged as many episodes as possible. So that was a good one.
Well, cool. It's since been retired off the internet. I did that when I was an employee. And then as we parted ways with my prior employer, it was time to do a reset for chapter 2. So there were some great episodes there, though. There were some really, really fun ones. And that was, where I was just jumping in, getting my feet wet. So hopefully I've learned a bit and they've continued to get better. But today I want to talk about you, not about me. I know Sarah Baker, president of Triad Wealth, made the introduction. I was aware of you. I don't know when I started following you on Twitter or now X.com, but it was a while ago. So I had heard the name, but I'd never met the person. How did you and Sarah connect? I never put that together.
I don't go to very many conferences, but every one I go to, she's there. And I think she knew the wealth.com people and like I'm their head of community, like to start Is It Altruist. So like, I think we got introduced that way. And I think we just kind of really hit it off. She's awesome, very intelligent person.
Yeah. And an incredible networker. I feel like she knows everybody in finance.
Totally.
Actually, she was the one that introduced me to Tim White at wealth.com. So yeah.
Tim's a good dude.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, okay. So for those unfamiliar with you, I'm going to kind of set the stage and then we'll just let this thing go wherever it goes. Like I said, you're 28. You got into the business when you were like really started your own firm at 25. So only 3 years ago. But what's crazy is you've already grown a pretty substantial firm that's very unique in its approach. And we'll get into the fee-based approach that you have. But the other thing that's really unique is almost 100% of your business is driven through what used to be Twitter is now X.com. I'm not making that up, right?
Nope. It's probably like 97%, I would say. Like we do get referrals. The problem is the way that we've grown and the type of clients we've grown into, a lot of the people in their circle are not in their same financial situation. So they'll refer us to friends who are just not quite the right fit. And so we help them get to the right firm for them. But yeah, it's really all Twitter. And then, some referrals.
It's still hard to say X.com, isn't it? Like I always just want to say Twitter.
Yeah, I call it Twitter. I'm not changing.
You're just like, you're like, now you're starting to get old if you're doing that. Like I'm calling it back, what it was called back in my day.
That's true. I didn't think about it that way. I thought of it more as just I like the name and I'm used to it. Not that I'm going to be like the person who people are like, what the heck is Twitter? What are you talking about down the line?
Be careful as you get older. I just turned 44 and we have quite a few 20-year-olds that are here at Triad, and there's definitely, I'm realizing I'm getting old because they know none of my movie references, like none of my music. And so there's definitely gaps that start to happen as you get older.
That's so funny.
Let's go back to, I know you were a college athlete, played basketball. One of the things I've seen is that kind of athletic competitiveness and drive and willing to work hard translates really well into finance. I was a college athlete, a lot that I've seen that have been successful in this space. I'm not saying it's required, but I do think the skill set translates. So maybe we start with young Thomas. You're kind of going through the college athletic journey, and then what led you into finance?
Yeah, I think even like a step further back is like I went through this period where, I fell in love with basketball. And the thing about me was like, you ask anybody who knew me then, like I worked harder than anybody else. Like I spent 2 to 3 hours shooting every day. I'd go to lifts. My dad would come rebound for me. And like what that really taught me is I think a lot of people when they go through their life, they see something that's like unattainable. And I think what basketball taught me is that like if I control what I do, I can get to the place that I really want to get to. And I'm not saying like I obviously didn't go to Duke or one of the best basketball schools, but I had my high school record and pretty much every single statistic. I had D1 and I had D2 offers. I went and played at Minnesota State, got hurt, decided I didn't really want to play anymore, went to Butler, had a chance to walk on, decided I didn't really want to do that and go back to basketball. But I do agree with you. I think, what that taught me was just really putting in the work, right? And if you focus on the actions, results come and it takes time. So I think that was a really big thing for me when I stopped. I did some personal training and I did a bunch of internships and all this. And like the personal training I did, I felt good about. Like I'm helping people, like I feel the impact of that. But then I did a bunch of I did 6 internships in college.
Wow.
The biggest one was Eli Lilly. I did 2 at a consulting. I did like an insurance firm. I did a startup. And I hated all of them. Like I really did. I was like, I just don't really want to work. This sucks. And I think the big reason is that like I was in the stage where like you do something, you pass it on, whatever happens. Like it's, you don't really get to move up until you hit X number of years. Like the tangible feel, like of the actions you put in, the work you put in, you don't really feel like how that helps somebody else. And unluckily I ended up at a broker dealer, but luckily I ended up in the industry. Right. And so I think I finally found an area that was like, okay, well, the actions I take have impact. And the harder I work and the more that I do, the more impact that I can have, the more that can, benefit me in my life. And, that wasn't the right place to be, but this was the right industry for the way that my mind works.
I relate to that a lot. My first job was at Payless Shoe Source corporate office in Topeka. And I remember just the feeling like you're playing a game of politics because there's so many levels. And it's like, well, I could just kick ass here, but at the end of the day, I've got to kind of like play the political ladder to climb. And that's just not how I'm wired. I'm like, put the work in, see the results. And that's one of the things I love about finance. Most firms, unless you go to large corporations in finance, it's kind of you get what you give. So you start this BD. This is about how old? 22, 23? Like how old were you?
22.
22.
Yep. I think I graduated in that first week. I took like the health exams, right? And I really didn't know what I was getting into. All I knew is my grandma's pretty well off. She started a business with like $500, grew a business, was very successful, and she benefited our whole family. Like she paid for our college. We got to go on she'd take us on a vacation every year if we wanted to, every 5 years for the anniversary, we do big trips. And a lot of that came from having a good financial advisor who helped her invest and do good things with her money. So like, that's one of my early things. I just remember my parents talking about them and like the lake around Wisconsin that we'd go to. Their financial advisor had a great house and, he was a good guy. And so I didn't really have the like bad taste in my mouth about financial advisors that I think a lot of other people did. But I also didn't know what the job entailed in any way. And obviously anybody who's been in broker dealer life, that's not really what true financial planning looks like. Yeah. I think I got a foot in the door, and what I did is I went outside of my company. My company was very big of like all the mentors you need are here and you can learn everything you need from us. And that was not true. I wasn't learning any of the things that I needed to learn other than permanent life insurance and how to try to, get your cousin to buy something from you. And I took this step outside of that, right? And, obviously that's not all broker dealers, but,
Right.
some of the bad captive ones,
I mean,
let's be real.
I'll say right there, the dirty little secret in finance, as I now look back, is a lot of times it's kind of, here's the young college age kid that's used to living on $2,000 a year or whatever. Okay, bring them right into finance. And now they're kind of in this captive organization where it's called grandma, your aunts, your uncles, and it's basically using the family network effect to kind of get assets. And then what? I don't know the statistics, but I feel like it's 1 out of every 50
It's
maybe
80%
makes
fail.
it. Yeah. And so
That's
basically
what
all of
you're
these
doing.
assets just roll up. What were your thoughts there on stats?
Yeah, they said 80% of financial advisors fail there. And they don't think it's a training issue. They think it's a people issue. And it's like, no, that's just obviously it's an issue here of the way things are done, right? Like nobody wants to be sold things. People want to be taught things and helped understand how to do the right things with their money. And so, obviously that was the big problem for me coming in is like instantly I knew this was not the right thing or the right place, but I could stay there as long as I needed to until I found the right avenue. Because I think, and I don't want to hate on the captive insurance places too much, but I also want to be realistic. Like the last 2 years, I've done way less one-on-ones with advisors. I do have an office hours that on average 40 to 50 advisors come to. There's 400 plus, maybe 500 advisors on my list now. And I did over 400 one-on-ones with advisors. 75% work came from captive insurance agencies. Everyone had the same story. So let's not pretend there aren't good advisors there, but let's also not pretend that most of it is, not being taught the right way. You can still have good people in bad areas, but still not really the best environment.
Yeah. I kind of call it the church of finance. Well, I've seen this, I don't know how many hundreds or thousands of hours at this point. I've done coaching advisors over the last 2 decades, but you are very much a product of kind of the school that you grew up in. And it's almost like there's these different religions in finance, whether it's insurance focus, fee only focus, and there's all, I can't even name them all. But I think at the end of the day, the most successful advisors, agents, they're people focused. They're like, hey, I want to help this person. I don't want to just sell them a product and move on. And I found that to be pretty true. So let's jump. We were kind of doing a pre-conversation before we hit record. So young Thomas enters the BD world, starts learning some things. And then it wasn't too long thereafter, you connected with Russ Ford and Justin Castelli as really kind of call it your first mentors. Is that a fair statement?
Totally. So what happened is Russ Ford's local to me, good advisor. I saw his website somehow, and the website was all about like, I'm not here to sell you anything. I'm here to be, think like friend across the table. Like you can bring your kids into the meeting, like put your guards down. I'm not going to be a student type person. We're just going to be like, we're two friends and I'm here to help you and I care about you. And his website spoke to that. And I was like, that is exactly what I'm feeling like I want to do. And I was at a random conference, some small thing in Indy. And I was like, wait, that's him. I ran up to him and I was like, hey, are you Russ Ford? And he was like, yes. I was like, oh my gosh, saw your website, love it. I would love to build something like yours. Like, would you, meet with me on a one-on-one? And he really kind of took me under his wing. We probably did about every month for a while. And he really helped teach me about, financial planning. He left Mass Mutual. So he kind of had a similar background. He went to Butler like I did. So we had a lot of similarities, and he wasn't hiring or really at a point. And he connected me to Justin Castelli. And so I went to like an XY planning type local event where they were both at. And I got to know Justin well. And I was like, Justin, please hire me. And he was like, I'm not hiring anybody. Like, I don't want any advisors. That was never my plan. I met with him again. I was like, just hire me. Like, I'll take no money. I literally said, pay me $2,000 a month as I learn and grow. I don't need a lot of money. I just want the opportunity to learn. And I think after like 4 or 5 meetings, I pushed him enough that he was like, you know what? I kind of had this feel that like when I meet somebody really good and they were the opportunity, I'm going to give it to them. And so he hired me, and it was perfect for me because I wasn't really the person who wanted like follow every guideline and here's what you do and here's this. He was kind of more of like the nudge you in the right direction type person. Like, I'm here and I'm learning things. I'm like, well, what about this? Great. I'll push you and I'll help you do that. And, we got to a point where I learned so much from him, but we were also like, it was during COVID. I was at home. He was at the office. We didn't have to talk very much. And he was like, I feel so much guilt. He's like, I feel like I'm not doing anything right now. Like, and honestly, like for my own peace of mind, and also I think you're ready to start your own firm, go do it. So I'm like in his office, no prep. I never wanted to be a business owner. I just wanted to serve clients, not have to worry about anything. And he's like, no, you're doing this. And I was like, oh my gosh.
Wow, that's
okay.
Cool.
And he told me the first day I started that I see a lot of you and me, and I know you're going to want to be a business owner and you're meant to be one. And I was like, nope, never thought about it. Never once in my mind was that what I wanted to do. And he pushed me to do it. Like I owned my podcast, like I owned everything that was mine. He always had me set up my own website. So like it was kind of a nice little transition into being able to start. And again, like he was there. If I ever had any questions, he was there. And, one good thing about starting on social and stuff is I build a good network of advisors that when you launch your own firm, there's going to be a million things you don't know how to do. But if you know the person who can solve that problem or who you can go to, it is actually a lot more manageable than people think.
Well, there's a couple lessons there. Number one, I think there's a lesson in leadership from Justin, and I want to circle back to that. But the first thing that created that was you were willing to ask for help, which means you take your ego and you reduce that so you can ask for help. But there's so many young people, and if you're listening into this conversation, I will say most people in finance that I've met, if you simply ask for help and you're a humble student, you will be blown away by how many people come out of the woodwork. So where did that come from
Absolutely.
For you, Thomas? Were you brought up that way where your dad's like, seek mentorship? Did you stumble across that yourself? What led to you pursuing that?
I think that was kind of just how I always was with like basketball, honestly, of like finding good people who can help coach and mentor and push you in the right direction. But I don't know if it was actually a skill that or something I was used to doing until I got to here. And I don't really know when I became comfortable with it. I guess in my mind, I didn't really see it as an ego thing, like that I was dropping my ego to ask to help. I felt like it was just that like I had a lot to learn and, most people had been in my shoes and they were willing to help, just like I'm willing to help other people answer questions or do other things. I think it just came natural to feel like I guess I didn't really know as much that the industry normally isn't like that, right? Like again, at my first firm, like if you ask somebody for help, they're getting revenue from the client, right? Like, fine, I'll come in, I'll do it, but I'm getting 50% of the revenue, right? That's how every single thing was. But I also think the point about Justin's really, really important too, because my first company, when I left, yelled at me, they got mad, they did all these things. Not one of them has ever talked to me one time. They never liked a LinkedIn post, a Twitter post. They've never once interacted with me. When Justin and I left, it was like he was pushing me to do what was best for me. And they didn't even think about anybody but them. And I think that was very telling.
What's up, DBDL Insiders? Brad here, and it is official. We have an apparel website, a swag website, whatever the kids call it these days. It's available and live now at dbdl.com. Go check it out. Also, we have a special discount code for you DBDL Insiders. It is DBDL. If you're watching this on video, I'm actually rocking one of the hats. It's one of my favorites. They're super comfortable, waterproof, and we have shirts, we have hats, we have crossbodies, or as I like to refer to them as the old school fanny packs from back in the day that are back. Really cool lifestyle swag. I can tell you I have a number of our DBDL shirts. These things are top notch. Jason Khalipa himself told me it's one of his favorite shirts to work out in, former CrossFit Games champion. Henner Gracie rocks it as well. So go out to the website, dbdl.com, check it out. Send me some photos once you do. Tag us at DBDL Podcast on just about any social platform once you're rocking the DBDL gear out in the real world. Well, a parting thought on just the asking for help or connecting with others. I remember I was in my 30s, so it was probably 10 years ago or so, almost 10 years ago. We brought in Joey Coleman at my prior employer to speak. Actually, it's funny. His book's sitting here right in front of me. So he just wrote Never Lose a Employee Again. And prior to that, Never Lose a Customer Again. Both awesome books, incredible speaker. But we were having dinner one time, and I remember him saying, as a speaker, there is no greater compliment than when you finish up and you share a message that somebody comes up to the stage and says, thank you. Like that really hit home with me. That thing you shared, like I'm going to use that. And he said, you'll be blown away. Like he's like, I've spoken to rooms with thousands of people and there might be 3 people that come up at the end because it's kind of this intimidation thing or I don't want to bother them thing. And that story just always stuck with me from my experience because I've been on stages, I've been on podcasts. If somebody reaches out and like, dude, that thing you shared really meant something and it changed how I thought, like there's no greater compliment. So I just think there's this fear of the unknown or maybe intimidation thing that gets in people's way. And it sounds like you never really had that. You were just the guy walking right up and introducing yourself to Russ Ford as a random stranger at a conference.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it didn't really cross my mind in that way. And luckily now looking back, I'm glad that was, I think that is like, everybody kind of has that one pivotal moment that kind of pushes you and changes you. And I think that was really important because I think a lot of people in my shoes at Thrive to where I was at would be like, any job offer, get me out and go. And I didn't do that. I spent a lot of time. I had, I think 7 or 8 offers before I was like getting paid 4 to 5 times what I made with Justin. But I knew Justin would be the best stepping stone in my career and that would get me to the best place long term versus junior advisor at a corporate place. Like, we talked about this earlier, how my mind works. Like that was not going to be the place that would foster me to be the best that I could be.
Yeah. And such a lesson in leadership there because I've seen and heard the experience you talked about where they're kind of like, you're dead to us if you're not working for us. And the best leaders I've ever come across is those that realize their seasons and you'll have a great team member on your team. And sometimes they outgrow the business. And, if part of leadership is growing other leaders and wishing them well, what I think oftentimes is missed is it's almost like right now, we're talking about Justin and how awesome he is. So Justin helped grow an entrepreneur, planted a seed out there. And because of the way he handled it and wished you well, now you're an advocate for him and his work versus saying, oh, that guy sucked. He tried to hold me back. And it's so common, your first experience in finance where people are like, there's just this bitterness. And I think it goes back to ego again of do you think Thomas was an indentured servant that was, gonna serve here until the day he died? Unfortunately, that's not how it works today. So do you have any other thoughts of your side of that and how that's impacted your leadership now as you grow a team with just the lesson from kind of growing up under Justin?
I think between the two, what I learned is so now I'm building All Street, right? I have 2 full-time people around me and my client base. And the one thing that I've learned through that and kind of watching my wife and her roles and other things is the best thing that I can do now as a leader is create a work environment that people never want to leave, right? And that's, if I'm in their shoes, what would I want, right? I would want to be rewarded for the growth of the firm, even though that might not be them who's generating the new people, right? I want to give them unlimited days off. I want to give them work the hours that you need to work as long as the work gets done. And I think if I hire people similar to me, if you give them freedom, you'll actually get the best out of them. And I know that's not doable in every single role and with every type of person that you work with. But what I've found is if I find the right people, here's the overall thing you need to do. Go figure out how to do this better than I could do it, has made us really, really good at what we do.
Awesome. All right, let's shift because we already teased it that I think you said 97% of your current flow of new assets is coming through. We'll just call it Twitter. Yeah, I feel more comfortable calling it Twitter too. So
thank you.
We'll go old school. We'll call it Twitter today. So we were talking, and I know you're familiar with Dave Zoller, James Knoll. As I look at this young generation of advisors, obviously we have tools today we didn't have when I got in the business in 2007. And that is social media existed, but it didn't exist with the reach. And I believe all of the different tool sets that we have today. And so let's start just on the sheer marketing front, because I look at it as there's a funnel here. And the cool thing is you can post on Twitter. And now I'm looking here, you're currently at, let me go back. I dove in on one of your posts. 28,600 followers on Twitter. And so now you've started to establish reach. You post very consistently. I was following you before we ever met, and it's good content. So that's key.
Thanks.
But let's talk about how Twitter became a marketing funnel for you and what you've learned along that journey.
Yeah. So there's a big reason I actually left Thriven is that I couldn't do social media. And I was like, okay, if I look across any service-based industry, you're going to find the best people from social because you get to vet them and their intelligence, right? If you're hiring me for my brain, you should know how I think, how I talk, and the knowledge base that I have. And everybody is like, oh my gosh, like if I get people to a webinar, I get people to this in-person event, that is such a good way to get clients. Well, what if I could basically do that multiple times a day, every single day, so I can hit people with information, potentially thousands of times a year, right? Like when you think about it that way, you start to understand why it's really powerful. And so for me, I first started only on LinkedIn because that's what everybody said. Like, right, LinkedIn is for clients, Twitter is for, connecting with other advisors.
Mm-hmm.
I listened to that for, maybe a year or so. And I was like, this is so dumb. I'm learning from experts on Twitter and real estate as CPAs, as lawyers. Why would I not, like, if that's how I use this platform? Because when I use LinkedIn, I basically am just scrolling and like, you engage to, because
Right.
that's what you're supposed to do. But like people aren't generally asking questions or going deeper into a topic there. And I realized that people were on Twitter and that's what I like to be. And I was trying to work with people similar to me, business owners, high income people, scaling businesses, et cetera. And so I started on Twitter. I started creating, and I remember an advisor reaching out to me. He was like, dude, your Twitter sucks. You talk way too much about personal finance. And I was like, yeah, that's what I'm trying to do. And he's like, nobody wants to read your personal finance stuff here on Twitter. I looked at his last tweet and it was about his fridge. He was talking about how annoying his fridge door was. And I'm like, okay, I think they don't want to listen to what you're talking about is actually what I see. And so I've just gone down this lane and actually this really reaffirming thing a couple of weeks ago is people always are like, you don't talk that much about your personal life. And, I weave in like Duke and the Bears and things as I do that. But like, I'm not just going to fake put things out to just post about it. And Justin Welsh, who everybody loves on social media, somebody I saw, he was like, hey, leave a comment on here. I'll review your profile if you want me to, and I'll give you advice. Somebody left it. He went to their page. He goes, 4 of your last 5 tweets are about baseball. Nobody cares about what you think about baseball if you're trying to get people to want to work with you. And I was like, thank you. Like, this is the belief that I've had for 3 or 4 years. And so like my whole approach here is that, I think people look at marketing wrong in our industry and they think marketing is like Nike, right? Like we put out ads and like, just do it. And like, people are going to have brand awareness and they're going to buy your shoes. Not it, right? People want to work with people. They don't care if I'm at All Street Wealth, if I'm at RLS Wealth with Justin, if I go to Triad, where I go, they want to work with me. And so what marketing is for me is personal branding. All I'm trying to do is show I'm a subject matter expert. I can solve their unique problems. I explain things in the way that they understand. That's it. And if I do that for long enough, once they hit that pain point where they need somebody, they're going to reach out to me, right? So, hey, my business is, I'm doing pretty well. Oh, all of a sudden I'm making $1 million a year in my business. I do need to hire help. I need to make sure I'm making the right decisions. Who's the one advisor who's never asked anything from me, but has educated me for years about things nobody else has talked about? That's the person they're going to go book a meeting with. And all I've done head down is focus on that approach. And it's worked really well.
So we're going to make sure in the show notes, we'll put a link to your Twitter profile. As I just scroll here, I mean, the one you have pinned at the top, it's very, I'm just going to read it here. So those that are listening in can kind of get some context. I have clients making close to $1 million a year as a W-2 employee, taking the standard deduction. Then I have business owners making 1/4 of that with hundreds of thousands in deductions. The tax code is built different for owners. Here are 11 of the best tax planning moves for business owners. And then basically you start a thread where you're naming 1 through 11. That post was June 7th, 598,000 views, 54 comments, 169 retweets, 1.6K likes, 2.9K bookmarks. So let's rewind, because most people have been on Twitter for a long time and never had a tweet do anything like that. Mm-hmm. Here has been my experience, and I want to kind of unpack your journey on building this. Okay. Our industry and finance advisors is somewhat built on instant gratification. And that is, you kind of hit some of those, but even like when you first get into it, it's like, hey, call your warm network, call grandma, call grandpa, call aunts, call uncles, get them in for an appointment, do business. Do the public mailer, do the dinner seminar, do the paid radio show, do the paid TV show where you're purchasing an audience. And so it's kind of this instant gratification, spend money, get appointments, close deals, right? And social media does not work that way at all. It's the long game. So give us like I started with no followers. I kind of refined my strategy. I finally got some traction. And then when did it actually turn into a real marketing funnel where you did business from Twitter? Like, if you don't mind kind of going through memory lane there.
Absolutely. You are absolutely right. It is not the fast way to get clients, but it is a consistent way to get clients once you get that built. So I would say I first started on Twitter with 800 followers. I think that'd be 3 years ago. I ended that year maybe it's 2 years ago. I ended that year at about 7,500.
So real
followers.
Quick, can I ask a question there? Because most people, you start a Twitter profile, you have 0 followers, and there's like 5 buddies that are also on Twitter. And so then you kind of connect with them. But how did you go from 0 to 800?
I had a Twitter probably since I was like from 2010 maybe. So I think it was just,
so you had some like high school friends, college friends sort of stuff.
It was just people I knew really. It wasn't like anybody to work with me. It was really just, friends throughout life and stuff. So I started at 800 in January. I think that'd be 2022. I ended that year at about 7,500 followers. Okay. And what I started doing there is once I decided that was a channel I wanted to go down, I did I did 1 thread a day, Monday through Friday for like a month. And that was a grind for me, but it helped get some traction, get some followers going. And, I believe this is all a repetition game of learning how to write well, how to create hooks that get people interested in your content is obviously such an important part, right? Like that's the biggest thing most advisors missing is they basically just wrote an Investopedia article that you didn't get anybody interested in, right? Like if you can't get them to go to tweet 2, well, it doesn't matter if you had great information in 2 to 30 in your thread, nobody is reading it. And you mentioned bookmarks. To me, bookmarks and the number of people who read the last tweet in your thread are the biggest telling sign of it's good or not. Because you'll see people who have like a catchy hook and they get 100,000 views, but their last tweet had 20 people. What I like to look at is my best performing ones that have converted the most people at the end have 20 to 40,000 views on the 30 to 50th tweet, right? Like if you've captured somebody that deep in a reading, they're going to be interested in working with you over time, as long as they're not a true DIYer, which some people are. And, not everybody's going to work with an advisor, and it's okay to educate people who aren't going to work with you. But I started there, and I think in that year, I'd already been doing LinkedIn for like a year and a half. So I was okay at social, and I probably started to get a few prospects a month towards the end of the year. And then come Q1 of the next year, I was consistently getting like 7-ish prospects a month. But at that time, those prospects were, I make $200,000 a year. We're in our 30s and 40s. Like my model was like $350 a month or something was my top model. Mm-hmm. Then throughout that year, I started to grow quite a bit. I ended that year at, I think, like a little over 15,000, like probably like 16,000 or something. And by the end of the year, I was probably getting 14 prospects a month, similar to that. Maybe we're getting to the 300s. We're starting to do quite a bit better, 300,000 to 500,000 of income, I would say. And then now this year, I've gone from whatever that number was, like 15 to now 28. And the average person who's coming to work with us is making $1 million of income or more. I mean, we've gotten prospects in the 100 million net worth range. And so it did take time, but I've also refined my content to go from more simple to more complex, right? Mm-hmm. I really figured out that I didn't want to just work with millennials. I wanted to work with 30 to 40-year-old business owners that are netting 7 figures in income. And so not only did I change my marketing, but I was working with those clients. I built my team around working with those clients. I had services like at the start, I think Q3 of last year, my minimum model was $750 a month. Now my minimum model is $1,000 a month and $1,500 a month. And everybody fits into one of those two. And then we also, in the last couple months, we started to actually say, okay, if you want to do AUM, we can do AUM. And so we went from 3 to about 15 million in the last 2 months. And I don't care. I give everybody the choice. 12,000 is the minimum fee, 1,000 a month. If you have enough in assets at a 0.75% fee, you cross 12K, you can do that. If you don't and you want, any asset management, we charge 0.35% along the 12,000 a year fee. And then you can graduate. I don't care what model you pick. We want to help you. Some people hate AUM. Some people love AUM. We don't care.
I want to make sure we go into that here in a second, because you have one of the most unique rev models of any that I've ever crossed paths with in finance. And one thing that I love about it, though, I feel like you just removed friction. You're like, hey, there's friction here. Some people want me to manage their assets. Some don't. Some just want the advice. So you kind of give them a fork in the road where, do you want to go right or go left? I don't care, but here's the minimum that the firm needs to do the work we do. And it's like super simple. It's not complicated, but there's some serious thought that went into it, I'm sure. So let's put that on the shelf for a second. I want to revisit that and get your take. If we stick with Twitter as a marketing funnel, what I've noticed here, and there will be some listening that are on Twitter all the time. There will be some that, like, I've maybe set up a profile and never gone back. But you mentioned your threads, which is basically where you have a tweet that links to another tweet that links to another tweet. And
it's like a blog post turned into a way to consume.
Yeah, that's what I was about to go to, man. It's really just a blog that's shareable, likable. You can take little sections out, comment. So I feel like it's been Twitter has a bit become the evolution of the blog that happened back in like the 90s, where that was a big thing. Do you feel the same?
And I do have a blog. Absolutely. Yeah. I have a blog. And like, obviously, if you follow Samantha Russell, she's a good friend of mine. Zero-click content is important. So I don't try to drive people off platforms at all. I want to nurture them on the platform. So all of my threads are blogs that I wrote before. I turn them into a thread. And then if I have a good thread idea and I write it as a thread, I turn it into a blog and I let it host there. So when somebody says, oh, wait, Thomas, like, what about Backdoor Roth? I'm like, here's my blog about it. You can go to my website, and then they have an application to work with us there. So that way, it's hard to search social to find your content. So all my best content is also on my website. So I can always drive them over to there. And then, I repurpose a lot of those into weekly newsletters. Like, I am really, really, really big on repurposing. So like maybe a month ago, what I do is I create a lot of content. I think short form content is how you stay active, stay relevant, keep people in your minds. Long form content is how you convert people to clients, because anybody can Google qualified opportunity zone, like we were talking about before, and write 3 lines about it. How many people can go into the weeds, make it interesting, make it relevant, and make it like, here's why this is really beneficial to you post a liquidity event, right? And so I think between podcast, YouTube, and long form writing, that is where you get people to say, yes, that's the person that I want to work with.
Let's go into content creation, because now we're talking about it. So if I look at how things go from in your brain to either on a website, on Twitter, on a podcast, I've just crossed a lot of paths with people. They do it differently. So if I say this is your testing ground for new content, almost like you're a stand-up comedian, where does the brain dump originally go, and how does it get out of your brain onto wherever it goes first?
Yeah. So there's a mix. If it's new content, anytime I have a new idea, I throw it in Notion. So if I have just like lists of stuff, like I probably in January map out every blog post for the entire year. Like it's something that comes natural to me. So I like do things there. And then I basically just go write it in Word, or like I use Hype Fury, which is a scheduling tool where you can do threads and different stuff like that. But it's like idea comes, or I'm meeting with a client or whatever. Great. Here's an idea or a client story or something that could be really good. Throw it in Notion to remember that's a topic. I am huge on scheduling, right? The average advisor you talk to is like, oh, well, I started on social media and then fall reviews happened and then I stopped and then I started again for a month and then I stopped. And it's like, you're feeding like an algorithm, right? So like as soon as you stop, if you were here, you're back down, you have to build back to there. So like, since I've been creating for 5 years, I've never had a time off. Like it doesn't matter. I just schedule things. So like I've got to the point where I go to the pool for an afternoon on a Friday and I'm going to sit out there for 4 hours and I'm going to schedule 3 to 6 months of content in one sitting. Like I've just gotten to the point where wow. I look at all my old stuff and I'm like, oh, that's good. I'll use it. Or, oh, that topic is good. I could rewrite this better. Oh, and then I'm in the middle of them like, oh, that gave me a new idea. And I do that. And so I schedule 3 posts every single day on Twitter naturally. And then like That's separate from, oh, I have a new blog or I have a new podcast, or separate from I do 2 threads a minimum a week. And then what ends up happening is I go through busy seasons, and then all of a sudden I'll be like, oh, great, I don't have that many reviews. We always have a wait list of clients. We're very booked ahead, but then I'll be like, oh, this last month we didn't get as many prospects. I have a little bit of free time. I'm going to go repurpose my best ones I've ever written. So that one you read, I have many variations of that advanced tax planning one. I posted that last month. I got 37 prospects after I posted it.
That one?
And that will feed me. Yeah, I did a new one, and the new one has
okay.
1.4.
So man, my brain is going 17 different directions here. So I got to slow you down, man. But this is gold.
Yeah.
Okay. So the one we're looking at, and we'll put this in the show notes. So this is I'm just scrolling up again. So this is June 7th of 2023, July. We're just over 2 months old. So as we record this, 37 prospects came through this post.
So a newer version of that I posted a different hook based on business tax planning. I ended up getting 37 prospects that month from it. So I'll have to go back.
How do they, so if this is a sale, I'm thinking of this very much through sales funnel now.
Of course.
So you're scrolling down, and I have seen a trend now where a lot of the Twitter threads, it's like, hey, if you like this, click here. And that's where they finally take them somewhere else. How do you take them from the post to I'm now engaging on your website, or whatever your typical sales funnel is?
Yep. I don't do that. I think it's spammy where people push people, or they're like, sign up for my newsletter after every post. I don't do anything. You go to my profile, you click to my website, and you apply to work with us. I don't spend any time DMing people. I don't tell people to go work with me. I just let them be like, oh, this guy knows what he's talking about. I should see if working with him makes sense.
So basically, I just clicked this. It is allstreetwealth.com/Thomas. It takes me to a very clean website where it says schedule a call with me button right at the top, little like kind of bio with some links in it, your newsletter, check out YouTube, here's my podcast, and then a form as you scroll down, which looks like probably about 3 minutes to fill that out tops.
Yep, because we want to vet people. I used to let people book on my calendar, and I don't want to meet with any of the people who we know aren't a good fit from the start. And so we also highlight a minimum 12,000 fee, so we don't have to spend any time with people who are like, oh, we couldn't pay that.
Yeah, so right under the button, so here I'm just going to run through it for those on audio. Name, email address, location, what do you do for a living? If business owner, please specify revenue and employee count, current annual income, current net worth, desired service, which consists of financial planning plus ongoing, just financial plan, not sure yet. And then what has led you to looking for a financial planner? Please provide spouse, partner, significant other name, email. They're in a big button, talk with All Street Wealth. Directly under that button, minimum pricing is $12,000 per year for ongoing financial planning. So straight up, don't click the button if you're not interested in a minimum of $12,000 per year. Did you add that later because you were getting a lot of people that just weren't qualified to work with or couldn't afford you?
Yeah, I mean, we in the beginning had plenty of people who, were like, oh, I would have known they weren't a good fit. They made $200,000 a year, 12,000 is obviously not a good fit. Or, hey, this is a retiree. I don't work with retirees. That's not the audience I work with. And then I was like, then we have a couple of people be like, oh, 12,000. I'm like, great. Well, then let's just add it here. Because I want, if you're getting a good amount of prospects, I don't want to waste any time. I just will refer them. Here's a referral list of good advisors that you guys can go to. And so we keep kind of refining that process, and then I can come prepared to the meeting. And again, listening to James's episode, I do the same thing. We have one call. You choose to work with us in that one call or not. We don't do the get your info.
How long is that first call?
45 minutes.
45 minutes via Zoom, I would assume.
Yep. We do no in-person meetings or work with clients.
So via Zoom, 45 minutes, you're kind of going, I mean, what's your deciding factor of like, we move forward or we don't?
Yep. So honestly, because of that intake form, we know they're vetted or not. So it's really, is this a good fit? And, do you want to work with us? I spend the first half of the meeting just getting to know them, where they're at, what they're looking for, why now, what a good relationship looks like. Second half of the meeting, I take them exactly through what it looks like to work with us. Here's what we're going to do in between this meeting and the next. Here's what we do in the next meeting. Here's what we do in the next meeting. Here's what a financial plan looks like. We go through a full sample financial plan. Here's what the meeting after that looks like. Here's what it looks like after that, quarterly reviews. Here's what we do in every meeting. Here's my team. Here's fees. Here's onboarding dates. And I would say 60% of the clients that sign on, which is probably about, I'd say about 75% conversion, say yes in the meeting. Like my last client who signed on 2 days ago, we were 5 minutes into the meeting, I'm ready to go, man. Like we don't really need to talk more about this. Like I've known I wanted to work with you. I've listened to all your podcasts. Let's just get this going. When do I start and what do I need to do?
Okay, so let's rewind, because I think that last little point you made is it's the power of creating great content consistently is basic. And James Knoll said the same thing. We'll link to his episode in the show notes. He basically said they've almost bought before we even talk, because they've been vetting you. They've been reading maybe for over a year before they finally decide to reach out. And that's been the biggest disconnect I've seen, back to short game instant gratification versus long game, what it actually took to build the reputation, consistently put out great content. Let's just go to imaginary world right now. And let's say you retire from being a financial advisor. You're just going to be a coach that coaches financial advisors how to actually build a personal brand that drives business. If you were shooting me straight, Brad just comes to you today, I'm that advisor, and I'm like, hey, I have 0 followers on Twitter. I've got some general ideas about finance. I've been doing it a while. I think I can, I've met with clients, so I know the sort of questions they ask. And you sign me up for Thomas's boot camp to build a platform that can actually drive business. What are you telling me right up front? How long do I need to commit to this? And what's that boot camp look like before you expect I might get my first appointment from it?
Yep. So I would say first and foremost, when you don't have followers, that is your best time to put out the most amount of content you can and learn to become better, because everybody's like, oh, you write so well. You have good threads. Like you have good hooks. How do you do it? It's like, I've written probably 400 of them, right? Like it's a skill that you learn. I think people are like, oh, I'm bad at social. It's like, well, if you never played basketball and you go picked up a basketball, you're not going to be in the NBA, right? You're going to be playing on a middle school team, right? It takes time. Get the reps in. Don't just assume that you're bad at it. So I'd start with there. I'd say in the beginning, engaging with other people is the way you grow. So going on to other accounts, leaving thoughtful comments, like, doing that type of thing is really, really important to grow, but don't be the good post, like that's just wasted comments. Like you're not getting anything good out of that. A lot of my early, growth did come from leaving a really thoughtful comment on maybe like a Ramit post or, a Dave Ramsey idea or something like that. The other thing I would say is pick one long form piece of content or type of content you like to do. People are always like, well, what's the best one? Is it video? Is it this? Doesn't matter. If you don't like it and you're not going to be good at it, don't do it, because you're going to give up on it before you get the results. So I think word has to be a part of it. And then, that's a podcast. It can be video, it can be blogs and writing long threads, but I think you need the long form content to convert people. And then I would say, come up with a schedule you can stick to, but understand the less often the schedule is, the longer this time frame is going to be. So if you say, I'm going to post 2 times a week, understand that's going to take years, because if we think about how social media works, let's say you post twice a week, 8 times a month. And the statistic I found is that about 25% of your audience sees each post. So now everybody is seeing about 2 posts a month, and maybe neither of them applied to their situation, right? So like you really haven't nurtured them or educated them into what they're going through. So I think, post more, but it's okay to start at like 3. Like when I first started, I was like, I'm going to do 3 posts a week. And then it became 5, and then it became 10, and then it became 20, then it became like 40. And it just becomes natural, right? I have all my scheduled stuff. And then, I left this meeting. I have a good idea. I have a good post. Let me go add in new content mixed in as well.
All right. So on that input, here's what I've kind of picked up in the conversation. Wow, this client I just met with asked an interesting question about obscure tax rule, whatever. That's going like straight from your brain into Notion, like, hey, potential future post. Where do the other inputs come from as far as input in before you go to output?
Like how do I come up with the ideas?
Yeah, where's the content come from, or what the ideas of where I'm going to post, of what I'm going to post on? Sorry.
I just think it's so easy. I like it's just natural for me now because like, okay, I'm working with all of these complex clients facing very similar problems. Everybody has very similar questions. Like I think early on, my biggest concern was how am I going to come up with new content in a year? A lot of really good content is talking about very similar things in different ways over and over and over. It's the Morgan Housel belief, right? He basically writes about like 5 to 7 things in a different way every single time. That's
Mm,
all you need, right? Like when you boil down to what personal finance is or running a business well is, like it's not that complex. And what I tell people is like go to cash, right? Can you come up with 20 different things that you talk about with clients about cash? What about debt? What about investing? What about retirement planning? What about insurance planning? Like, yeah, we have 10 plus topics of 20 plus posts that you can write in different ways, right? You can have lists. You can do like the negative part of it. You can do the positive part of it. You can just restructure it. Then you can repost the one that was the best. Like we live in just an area that money touches every part of life. I don't think you should be running out of things to talk about. And if you are, you should probably start learning more because there's so much to learn in this space, right? Like there is so much in finance to know and to learn that like if you can't come up with things, I think it's because you don't have a deep knowledge base quite yet in finance.
mm. Question on the topics, because where my
Okay.
brain goes as you climb the net worth ladder there, typically taxes become more important as the higher
Number
net
one.
worth goes up. Have you found
Number one.
taxes to be the number one magnet that brings in higher net worth sort of meetings to your
Absolutely.
calendar?
Because we ask what made you reach out. Everybody cites it as one of the 3 reasons is taxes, right? Our average client bottom end is paying 250K in taxes. Our top client is paying 4.2 million in taxes this year, right? Like tax planning is big. They have CPAs. Their CPAs really don't communicate with them. They're just like, let me file. So that's what I build in house is we have an EA in house. We do tax projections. We do tax planning. We bring in their CPA. We help relay the information from them. And so instead of going from a reactive tax approach, now we have, tax planning 101's awareness, tax planning 201 is reduction, right? And so how do we teach them this? How do we help execute on it? How do we make their life simpler? Because they're high income, they're running businesses, they have families, they don't have a lot of time to think about it. They want that all offloaded.
So when you
So I talk
onboard
about
them
it
as
a
a
lot.
yeah, when you onboard them as a client, are you basically saying, okay, here's your CPA, cool, let's pull them on the next Zoom. I want to get them connected with my team. We'll do the proactive ideas, bring them into the conversation. Now they're helping execute.
So a little different. So what happens
Okay.
is most of our clients don't have good CPAs. They
Okay.
have like the average CPA doesn't specialize in a person running a business or making over $1 million a year, right? That a lot of times gets over the complexity level. And a lot of these CPAs, they have 800 to 1,000 clients. They're just not built around doing that. And so for 75% of our clients, we build their team. We build their insurance people, we build their CPA. And I have a couple of agreements with great CPAs where my clients pay them for planning or pay them for filing and then $1,000 a year extra to come to 2 meetings with us. We're all
Mm,
on the same page, all working together. And I'm trying to get as many clients into those couple of relationships. So it's easier for everybody. But then we do have clients who do have good CPAs and we go to work with them. If they say, hey, we won't meet with you, we tell the clients that then you should fire them. Because if we're not all going to work on the same page, it's going to be way worse for you. I relay to you, you relay to them. They relay to you, you relay to me. That's a lot of extra work
yeah.
for you. That's not the service you're looking for.
Thomas, I'm picking up something here. You're not afraid to be bold. Is that fair?
Yeah, I would say so. And I think, our clients come in and that's what they want, right? Like
Yeah.
everybody says, I want somebody to help oversee, like none of our people are talking, we're doing different strategies. Nobody's on the same page. There's no proactiveness. And we honestly maybe replacement wise, it's probably like 10 of our clients that we've had to do that. And they've all been like, that actually makes sense, right? Like if they're not going to respond for 3 weeks to an email, our clients want the answer in that moment that they actually have the time to think about what's going on.
It sounds like you're just setting a standard. And, unfortunately, a lot of people that have dealt with subpar financial advisors, CPAs, estate planning attorneys, the bar is here. And you're like, no, our bar is here. And if your CPA chooses to rise to that, cool, let's go, bring them in. If they don't, they need to go because they're going to slow us down. We're not going to be able to do our job and operate at the level that we're committing to. Is
Yep.
that
And
simple?
the interesting thing is when we meet with a good CPA, now they're on our list. We know that they're
Yeah.
people we can refer our clients to. And we all know the way that we think about things for our clients. So I think that's helpful. And I do think it's important, right? Like our process can be really good when we have the right other people to help serve our clients. So like the PNC people we use that are national, they know exactly what we want with our clients' policies, right? They know their higher net worth. They know we want maxed out liability coverage. They know we want umbrella. They know like how we think about, we don't care about low deductibles. We care about large outlays. Everybody's kind of trained in the way of like, here's the type of people we serve. Here's what they need. Help us execute on this and make their life simple.
What do you, just like you shared with kind of the PNC, the CPA, the tax planning, same concept with estate planning, invite your estate planning attorney into the conversation, or if they're not like responsive or whatever, hey, we've got a network of estate planning attorneys.
Yeah, none of them have any. We had 2 clients ever come into us with an estate plan done. So for the people it fits, we have them use wealth.com. And then we also have them hire attorneys through Wealth when they need some advice or people to do deed transfers or business ownership transfer stuff. And then we have vetted estate planning attorneys for clients when they are beyond that as well.
Cool. All right. We're going to keep rolling because I know you've got an appointment coming up here pretty quick. Okay. Let's circle back to the fee structure. So I'm going to recap it, make sure that I don't miss anything, but also I think it's important to know your typical clientele are age 30 to 50-ish, right? Kind of that age range.
Yeah, I think I looked and I think our average client, right, Capital tells us, I think it's like 39 or something.
39.
Right
okay.
around there.
And also business owners.
Yeah, we have, I would say.
Is that a requirement they're a business owner or just, okay.
So we have mostly business owners. I'd say like 75 to 80% of new clients. The other 20% are like, I'm the head lawyer for a publicly traded REIT, or, we have some doctors that are super high income. It's really the lens of very high income, very high taxes. We really need help on offloading this and tax planning. But our bread and butter and most of our focus really is business owners.
Cool. And then let's talk through that fork in the road. Hey, you can just pay us a fee for the planning and everything we do, which is a minimum of $12K per year. And then we can talk about how that scales. Or you went through the math earlier, but basically if you want to do kind of what I would call more standard finance where, hey, you move your assets over and we now charge a fee to manage those, the break even is it has to be at least 12K to do that.
We basically
model.
just say if you have we basically just do it at 1.5, 7.75. So it's about 15K. For that. Because a lot of our clients, right, like we have very, very high income business owners that are new, like this is their 3rd year of the business. They've doubled their income. Their business is their net worth. Like we have a client we work with that's like 80 million net worth that they have $1 million liquid, right? Yeah. So a lot of these people, traditional advisory firms wouldn't serve. We get this situation of we're actually going to add so much value for you on a flat fee basis. And then when you sell your business and you have assets, you vetted us, that we're going to do good work. And now you want us to offload that. And for me with ultra high net worth clients, I actually partner with like a very large, an RIA that has about 10 billion in assets. And I use their investment management team for very complex, large clients.
Cool. So, question on your like future casting your business model, because you've got, when you're primarily your average client is 39 and they're all primarily business owners, I'm looking at this windfall of 10, 15, 20 years out where you're going to have a lot of, business transitions, M&A, whatever that may be, going public, depending on who the client is. That's where I foresee, like, assuming they trust you, you've got a great AUM platform, you might have these windfall events. Do you kind of foresee that, or do you see people kind of sticking with the fee-based structure? And do you let people toggle back and forth between those, or how does that work?
Yeah, people can switch once they have enough. If they want to switch over to the AUM side of things, they can. Again, if they wanted to do the 12 or 18K plus 0.35%, I found that it always gets pretty close. And so at the end of the day, like, if somehow they're like, let me switch because instead of now I'm at 30, I'm at 25 or 26, like that's fine, whatever. Like it's all going to work out. Like I've never had a client really try to get weird about pricing like that.
Yeah.
But I do think, yes, we'll have a lot of windfalls, and I think I'll bring on a pure just investment person down the line to handle all of that. I love the planning. I do like investments. I don't want to manage and do the trading and all of that myself. So I think that'll be an area we go down because I will hit capacity. I mean, right now I have about 80 households, and I would say 30 of them aren't ideal long-term fits. They're clients I've had since as long as I can remember that probably next year I'm going to have to like pass them to a different client. Around me, I have two full-time people, one ops, one just pure planning and tax planning. So I'll be able to work with probably 120 good fits in that situation. So it should be good. I mean, we'll probably get to a point where average clients 20,000+ a year. It'll be a good thing. And then, my vision right now is I'm going to bring on, an advisor I know really well, and we're going to launch an ultra high net worth wing, and we'll build around that and bring a investment team on. And then I'll bring advisors who do equity comp, who do doctors, who do, just specialty advisors. And then prospect comes in, great, this person specializes in what you're going through, pay them a salary, and I will generate all of the clients for them, kind of in the way that James does it. That's been the vision if I decide that I want to grow with more advisors.
Cool. This is my opinion. I believe based on what you've described here today, you've built a bit of like a kind of a virtual family office.
Exactly.
To where if you ever decided like, hey, we want to do like a true family office, once you approach, 10 million plus is kind of the standard bar there. You're already assembling the team. Now do you bring some people in house just because the bandwidth's there? Is that kind of where you're headed a bit?
Yeah. I mean, I view the true family office approach of like, 100 million plus, like the firm I partner with, they have it. And it starts at 20K a month or 25K a month of fees. So like, I don't know if we want to do bill pay and things like that, but potentially, because like right now I think I probably have 9 clients or 10 clients above 10 million with, I think 3 or 4 above 50. And so like, we'll have these really good opportunities coming down the line. And a lot of my business owners they make a ton of money and they're brand new to this business. So they are going to have liquidity events, or they're just going to keep these really high profit, machines where they're just churning income and investing, and they do private investments, and, they do all these other things.
Well, cool. Well, man, we could keep rolling. I feel like we're just hitting the stride here, but you've got a meeting right up around the corner. So, first off, thanks. This has been awesome, Thomas. I'm so glad Sarah connected us. Look forward. Like I said, I might be in Indy a little later this year for some 14-year-old football. So I will definitely give you a heads up if that happens. Last question. So this is the Do Business, Do Life podcast. How Triad really defines that is we want to help our members build a business that blesses their life, that doesn't become their life, where there's kind of this integration versus this tug of war. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Just what's Thomas's definition of that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's interesting because, like I said in the beginning, I just for a while thought like I'm never gonna like working. I'm not gonna enjoy it, and I finally found this area where like it almost feels like I'm playing a video game, right? Like what I'm doing is so fun. I'm building. Like I don't dread work any single day, and what I think success in a good life for me looks like is that I build something really awesome with people I love. So I've taken the exact opposite approach of don't hire people My hire, that's my EA, it was my best friend from childhood. He's a CPA, brilliant guy. I know the people in my life that are qualified to do good work and that we'll work together with, and building that with people you love. And he got to leave busy season and bad pay and a job he hates to come over, and he's like, man, this is the best thing that could ever happen. I can pay him way more than he was ever going to make. He can have a great life. And then, the next person I hired was somebody I knew from before who I knew was amazing at her job, and I brought her on. And then my dad's the outsourced CFO for some of the clients that we have. And, I just get to do a lot of these cool things. And as I expand, I do want to bring on people that I care about, that I know are qualified, that I know will do good work. And I want them to have that feeling, because I know a lot of my friends, they hate work. They hate going on Monday. They don't get this. And like, you live for the weekend. And like, I'm not even lying when I say like, sometimes on the weekend, I'm like choosing to work because I'm like, I'm sitting at the pool. Of course I'll do some work or create content. Like, this is fun to me. And so like, it feels weird to say, like, I feel like I'm in this place where like, I'm just in love with where my life is. I'm not the advisor that's looking to scale and sell. I'm like, why would I ever want to get rid of this when I can make a very good amount of money and love every day, like I don't want to go do nothing. That doesn't
Yeah.
interest me in any way.
Yeah. No, I love that, man. I feel the same. It's exciting to love what you do and be passionate about what you do. So, well, my man, I
Yeah.
will let you get, because I know you've got an appointment, but just had a blast. So thanks for the rapid fire knowledge drop that you did. I know this is going to we're going to put this on Twitter, and I have a feeling you're probably going to get some traction out there with this conversation. So thanks for pouring in, man.
Yeah. Thanks for having me on. This was fun.
All right. Till next time. See ya. Thanks for checking out this week's episode. On to this week's featured review. It comes to us from iTunes user BSKSHO, 5 stars. They say intimate and very informative, exclamation point. I have been listening to DBDL for about a month now, and it has completely changed my outlook on the industry and life. I am an aspiring 21-year-old financial advisor, and being able to listen to the guests and Brad's outlook on doing both business and life has already been transformative for me. Thank you to the DBDL team for making this show such a joy to listen to. Well, thank you so much, BSKSHO. That's awesome. At 21, you're already diving in. One of the things we say here at Triad is to be a lifelong learner. Those are the most successful people I've ever been around. They're students forever. They never stop learning, growing, challenging themselves. And so if you're doing that at 21, you're on a track that's going to take you awesome places in life. And I also just want to say that there's this, I think it's an African proverb that it says, if you want to go fast, run alone. If you want to go far, run together, something like that. I'm probably butchering it, but I absolutely could not do this show without the team here at Triad. Kelly on the social team, Brooke helping organize and schedule all of the interviews and keep me showing up in the right place. Allie internally that checks all the boxes. Sean on the website, the posting. Charlie, who's produced the podcast from way back when. Monica, I could just keep going on and on. There's a huge team that helps me here. But yeah, it makes it a lot of fun. I just get to show up. I get the easy part. I just get to show up and have fun conversations and be curious. And the team really does take a lot of the heavy lifting. So just a good lesson in that in life is, as Michael Hyatt taught me, it's not a big enough dream if it doesn't require a team. So continue to use your God-given gifts in life and take the rest of the stuff off your plate to allow you to do more of it. And yeah, so that's kind of my thoughts. So awesome to hear from you, BSK SHO. Thanks for listening in. And I'm excited for where you're going to go in life. And I'm just trying to think if there's any episodes I would recommend for a 21-year-old. I'll tell you a really good one is the podcast I did with Brooke Martin, episode number, just search DBDL executive assistant. But Brooke is on the team here as my executive assistant. And one of the things I learned early on, not early enough, is if you don't value your time, then you're going to end up doing other people's to-do lists. And one of the things is you can either run your calendar or it can run you. And so I think that's one of the biggest missing links in most of finance and just in business in general is allocating somebody to control your time, make sure you're focusing where you can maximize value to your clients and obviously to whatever business you're in. And so that's a great one if you want some really cool frameworks that I wish I would have learned at the age of 21. All right, y'all. We'll catch you on the next one. Take care.